call the Novi Board of Education regular meeting to order. Today is December 17th. I want to welcome everybody to tonight's meeting. And we will just start with a roll call vote. Mr. Mena, please.
Trustee Cook?
Here.
Trustee Hood?
Here.
Trustee Mena? Here. Trustee Murphy?
Here.
Trustee Roney?
Here.
Trustee Ruskin?
Here.
And Trustee Smith will join us shortly.
Okay. If we can please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we have the approval of the agenda. If I can get a motion.
Dr. Ruskin, we would like to, before you approve the agenda, we would like to have the agenda approved with one modification. That would be to bring the information and discussion item C up into an action item if the board approves.
Looking real quick, and I know we all had this conversation. Okay, so if someone would like to make that recommendation, we can see if the board is comfortable with that and to approve that.
I'll move to approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Support.
Recommended by Mr. Cook and supported by Mrs. Roney. If I can get a roll call vote, Mr. Mena?
I'll move to.
Trustee Cook?
Yes.
Trustee Hood?
Yes.
Trustee Mena? Yes. Trustee Murphy? Trustee Murphy?
Really quiet.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Trustee Roney?
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin?
Yes.
Okay. That's it.
Sorry, I'm used to someone being behind me, Mr. Mena, so that's why I'm pausing. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so next we have our first opportunity for comments from the audience related to agenda items. At this time, being on Zoom, we have opportunity for the public to submit comments to a Google document, which is received by the central office. Dr. Matthews, do we have comments from the audience this evening?
Yes, we do, Dr. Ruskin. We have, drum roll please, one comment. This is from Chris Holman. As a parent of a high schooler who has been shut out of her school and sport for over a month, one of the most disheartening things has been the lack of willingness in the district to push back on the state and organize with other school districts to get high schools back open. If anyone outside of concerned parents in Novi are leading that effort, I have not seen it from the administration or the teachers union. If we believe our protocols are safe and spread is not happening in the schools, push back. If we believe students need athletics and extracurricular activities to be mentally healthy and well-rounded individuals, push back. If we believe that in-person learning is the most beneficial, push back. Vaccine is rolling out and educators will be prioritized in the next phase, which will likely be toward the end of January. I did see Dr. Matthews' quote encouraging that teachers be prioritized, which is appreciated. Please ensure that the hybrid model is staffed appropriately to return the students to school 5 days a week as soon as our staff is safe, which means teachers that are either willing to get vaccinated or willing to teach in person without getting vaccinated, if that is their choice. We need to rally for these kids, and that includes administrators willing to push back on government mandates and teachers willing to step up and teach a full class of students after getting vaccinated. Set an example and be the leaders that you're encouraging our Novi students to be. And that is the only comment this evening at this point.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews, and thank you, Mr. Holman. Thank you, Dr. Matthews, and thank you, Mr. Holman, for your comment. We appreciate your feedback. Next, we will move to the consent items. So tonight's consent items is just the approval of last meeting's minutes. So if I can get a recommendation. Mr. Cook?
I move that the Novi Community School Board of Education approve the consent item as presented.
Support.
Recommended by Mr. Cook and supported by Mr. Mena. If we can get a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Roney,
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin.
Yes.
Okay.
Motion carries 6-0. I'm going to take a 2-second break here and just check on Mr. Smith, if you don't mind. Okay, we will continue. We will now move to our action items. The first action item is the personnel report. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin, and I will turn to Dr. Kinzer for the personnel report.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. This evening, we would like to recommend one new hire, Michelle Delzacchio, 6th grade social studies teacher at Novi Meadows.
Thank you, Dr. Kinzer. If I may get a recommendation. Mrs. Roney?
I'll recommend that the Novi Community School District Board of Education adopt the personnel report recommendation as presented. Sorry.
Support.
Recommended by Mrs. Roney and supported by Mr. Cook. Any questions or comments? Okay, Mr. Cook, please.
Just a quick one. With the numbers that we saw on the latest survey or the latest commitment, are we expecting to have any additional teachers take leave or anything like that, or are we pretty even swap?
I don't expect to see any leaves.
Okay.
I think that our staffing will remain constant.
Good.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, we are ready for a roll call vote. Mr. Mena, and Mr. Smith is here. Welcome, Mr. Smith.
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy,
Sorry. Yes.
Trustee Roney,
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin,
Yes.
and Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Recommendation is passed 7-0. Next, we have our next action item, which is the 2020-2021, tongue twister there, general fund budget. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. The state requires that all school districts adopt a budget for the upcoming fiscal year by June 30th of each year. The public hearing was held on Thursday, June 18th, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. at the regular meeting of the Board of Education. The notice appeared in a local newspaper on Thursday, June 4th, 2020, and the budget document was available for public inspection at the Educational Services Building beginning Friday, June 5th. The preliminary budget was adopted by the board at the June 18th, 2020 regular meeting. The revised budget was presented to the Finance Committee on December 1st, 2020 for review and was presented to the board for information and discussion at the December 3rd, 2020 regular meeting. And it comes back to the board for approval this evening. As you will recall, back in June, we were unsure as to what our budget outlook would be for the 2020-2021 school year. And we had originally adopted a budget that had both salary reductions and budget cuts in it because we were anticipating a $700 per student cut. And we had adopted an original budget that came in with a 9.97% ending fund balance. With the revised budget, we now have budget certainty because of we were held harmless in our per pupil allocation from the state. We also received a $65 per student one-time budget increase from the state. We also had some CARES money that came to the district as well. And so the revised budget presents both the new revenues and expenditures and the ending fund balance of 13.92%. We discussed this at our December 3rd meeting. Mr. McIntyre is here this evening if you have additional questions, but if not, we would ask the board that they would approve the budget revision as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. If I can get a recommendation. Mr. Mena?
Let's see, I got to make sure that I am unmuted, and I am, okay. I move that we approve the 2020-2021 budget revision as presented.
Support.
Recommended by Mr. Mena and supported by Mrs. Murphy. Any questions for Mr. McIntyre? Comments? Okay. Mrs. Hood, please.
It's just a quick comment. As chairman of the finance committee, I just wanted to reiterate our thanks to Mr. McIntyre and Mrs. Wheeler, the finance team at the district, because this budget went from really bleak to not so bleak, and we had a lot of puts and takes and changes. So just appreciate their attention to detail and knowing what the numbers meant. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hood. And thank you, Mr. McIntyre, for you and your team's work. We do appreciate you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Seeing none, Mr. Mena, I believe we're ready for a roll call vote.
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Roney,
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin,
Yes.
and Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Recommendation passes 7-0. Next, we will move on to our action item C, which is the extended COVID-19 reconfirmation. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. The Novi Community School District Board of Education met on the following dates to consider the extended COVID-19 learning plan: September 24th, October 15th, November 19th, November 23rd, and December 1st. The legislation requires that the district report out on key metrics. The key metrics are reported by the Oakland County Health Division each week. Among the key indicators reported are the following: the 7-day average of daily cases and counts per day, which have risen since September 8th when we started school. The daily cases per zip codes have also continued to increase since September 8th. The Oakland County Health Division also tracks data by school district boundary. They report the data as cases in the district per 10,000 residents. The latest numbers came out today, and we were down to 48.3, I believe, cases per 10,000. Also, it was reported as the positivity rate. The Oakland County Guidance for In-Person Instruction documents list the county at level E, which is the lowest rating based on cases per million residents and percent positivity. After the December 1st, 2020 Board of Education vote, a commitment survey was sent to parents. This would allow them to confirm the learning modality for their children beginning second semester. If parents did not want to change, they did not need to complete the survey. If parents wanted to change for their children, they could complete the survey. As of December 11th, when the survey closed, we had 427 parents had requested a switch in learning modality. 224 selected to move from hybrid to virtual, and 203 had requested to move from virtual to hybrid. Remember, as perspective, Novi High School has over 2,000 students, and 161 requested a change, or 7.8%. At Novi High School, 101 requested to go from hybrid to virtual, and 60 requested to go from virtual to hybrid. Those numbers have changed a little over the preceding few days, but they are pretty accurate there. On November 23rd, 2020 and December 1st, 2020, the Novi Community School District Board of Education approved the following extended COVID-19 learning plan recommendations. Through at least January 22nd, 2021, the end of the first semester, in-person, a hybrid blend of in-person and virtual instruction with strict adherence to clear safety protocols. Students will attend in-person school 2 days a week, virtual experience on Wednesday, and be provided at-home experiences 2 days a week. Virtual online instruction and online virtual learning program for students. And a continued focus on improving both our hybrid and our virtual program. If because of quarantine, classrooms cannot be appropriately staffed, individual classrooms or individual schools could go virtual until appropriate staffing levels could be maintained. Without our teachers, the human capital, schools cannot operate effectively. Beginning January 25th, 2020, virtual. Continuation of the virtual plan that has been in effect since September 8th. Students attend school remotely 5 days a week following the regular school schedule. Wednesdays will continue to have a modified schedule to allow teachers 90 minutes of collaborative time. In-person beginning as hybrid, it would be in-person instruction would continue in a hybrid format to ensure safety measures, including the use of social distance. Hybrid would utilize a variety of instructional strategies such as in-person instruction, at-home lessons, or virtual instruction. Work would continue to look for opportunities to improve the hybrid experience. Improvements that individual teachers discover and utilize would be shared with all teachers. Hybrid classes may take on a variety of forms as certain disciplines utilize formats that work in a subject area. For example, if a science class can find a way to make zooming in during at-home days work, then that could be utilized by all similar science classes. It is anticipated that the current structure of 2 days in person, either hybrid A, Monday through and Thursday, or hybrid B, Tuesday and Friday, a Wednesday virtual day with a modified schedule, and at-home assignments and activities for at-home days would continue. But it might be possible that the structure could change if other beneficial approaches could be implemented. Hybrid could be moved to 5 days in person if certain conditions are met that improve safety for both students and staff. At-risk students will continue to be provided with additional support as determined by our district team in consultation with parents. Choices made for second semester will continue for the entire second semester through June 2021 to provide continuity in the learning experience for both students and teachers. Virtual students would stay virtual for the entire second semester. In-person students would stay in person for the entire second semester. Any changes in plan the second semester will potentially result in changes in teachers or schedules for all students. We will work to avoid changes as much as possible, but it is inevitable that changes in both teacher and schedules will occur for some students. Parents will be asked again to recommit for second semester by December 11th to either virtual or in-person learning for second semester beginning January 25th. So the recommendation this evening is that the Novi Community School District Board of Education reconfirm the recommendations approved on November 23rd, 2020 and December 1st, 2020. Those were the recommendations approved technically for the November period. As you will recall, required by law is that we have the Board of Education reconfirm all of these COVID-19 extended learning plans each month. And that's why we're bringing it back to the board this evening so that you would approve what the board approved on November 23rd and December 1st.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. Appreciate that explanation. Before we move on, if I can get a motion for a recommendation. Mrs. Hood?
Yeah, I move that the Novi Community School District Board of Education reconfirm the extended COVID-19 learning plan recommendations approved on November 23rd, 2020 and December 1st, 2020.
Support.
Mrs. Hood and supported by Mrs. Murphy. We will open this up for discussion specific to this, and if you, we will have further discussion about metrics during our information and discussion piece. Any questions or comments? Mr. Mena, please.
Yes, Dr. Matthews, my assumption is, I mean, you read a pretty long piece there. My assumption is that the motion is identical to the one that we passed in December, correct?
Correct.
Well, the last for November. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss any potential changes there. Question for you. I know a lot of folks point out that our neighbors to the south, at least starting when allowed, plan on returning their K through 6 kids full time, 5 days a week. As our other districts. Can you maybe clarify for folks why you feel that districts like Northville and others can do that and Novi isn't in a position to do the same?
Sure, I can give you my perspective. I have talked to superintendents in these other districts, and for example, Northville is doing a cohort model. So, for example, they'll have 49 students. I talked to a teacher in Northville, and the teacher told me in one building, for example, there are 49 second graders. So they have 2 teachers and a parapro. And those 49 students are divided into 3 groups of about 16 each. The teachers rotate between those 3 groups. And so at any one time, group A will have a teacher, group B will have a teacher, group C will have the parapro. And so even though they are in school full time, they do not have a teacher full time. They have a parapro for part of the day, potentially up to half of the day. And so that group of students is not being taught by a teacher full time. And so while the students are in school, they are not being taught by a teacher full time for the day. And so I think our approach that we currently have works well. In addition, those 16 students, they stay in their classroom all day long. They eat lunch in their classroom. They have specials except for gym in their classroom. Whereas in our district, our students are able to go down to the cafeteria. They're able to go to the media center. They're able to go to the music room. They're able to go to the gymnasium. And so I think our approach is effective. And so we have the 2 days in person, the virtual day on Wednesday, and then we're given at-home assignments. And so, other districts are able to do that. They've chosen their approach. I would point out that since September 8th, our district has maintained its structure consistently over the 4 months of school, whereas other districts, no other district around us has maintained the same structure for the entire 4 months. The only change that we made was when the state mandated that we stop high school instruction. And so I feel that, and we'll get into it a little bit when we talk about the metrics conversation, but today we were finally able to connect with the epidemiologist at Oakland Schools, and she was very complimentary about how we have kept our students safe in our district. And so those are at least some perspective on why I think our approach has been effective. And in other districts, they can make the choices that they need to make. But I think for our district, we have made good choices. Now, having said that, as we look to the future, I would anticipate that we would find a way during second semester at some point to bring our students back K through 12 to 5 days a week of instruction, as long as the numbers continue to improve like they're improving right now.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. Mr. Mena, do you have any further questions, or you're all set right now?
I do.
Okay.
Okay. So really, it's really a difference in opinion on what works best for kids. I think in Northville, they take the approach that having more face time with teachers is more advantageous, and we just seem to have a different philosophy in that respect. Correct?
Well, I would point out that the total amount of face time that those students are getting is very similar to the total amount of face time that they're getting here in Novi. Even though they may be in the building for longer, their actual face time with a teacher may not be significantly more than what they're getting here in Novi.
But they do get more social time, though, correct?
They do get more social time, correct?
Okay. Okay.
Although I would point out that social time during the COVID pandemic is clearly not the same as social time during a regular school.
Right. Okay. The other thing, well, I know you and I discussed about the camera, so I won't bring that up now. But another comment, and this specifically, just so you know, this specifically at the high school level. My concern is that from talking to a lot of students, that the Wednesdays that we have set up for hybrid at the high school level isn't as productive as folks are letting us to believe, and which is why one of the suggestions, recommendations that I made when you had requested that from us was to potentially look at turning the Wednesdays to a full day, which and I'm talking specifically at the high school, and again specifically so that kids would get 5 days of in person every 10 days versus 4 days. So and that's an issue that I keep having folks reach out to me on as a concern. Do you want to speak to that as, again, if and I know you kind of mentioned it before. Actually you didn't, but I think our middle school principal spoke about it last time. Maybe if you can speak to that again, so that we have some clarity on that issue.
Sure. The discussion that we've had with our building administrators when we raised that point was that currently the hybrid teachers and the virtual teachers are able to kind of keep their students moving forward at relatively the same pace. If you added an in-person day for group A, for example, so they would go Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, they would have one extra day that week. And so the instructional pace would be off kilter when compared to hybrid B. Hybrid B would not catch up to the next week. So it's kind of a rolling 2-week off schedule for those students. And our principals, in consultation with their teachers, felt that the virtual day in the middle of the week allowed the two groups of students to come together to be one classroom. It also allowed us to keep the pacing similar for the students. And that would be a better approach than trying to add an extra in-person day that would throw off the schedule throughout the week.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I appreciate the question.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews, and thank you, Mr. Mena. Mrs. Roney, I see your hand is raised. Please go ahead.
I just have a quick question. When we see that we're going to be able to do 4 days, 5 days in person, are we going to start with K through 4 or K through 6 and then kind of roll in gently, where the numbers are close so we can get those young kids in and, try to get the others? I mean, what are our plans there?
Yep, and that's a great question. And we, in discussions with the epidemiologist today, we did talk about the different impact of COVID on age groups. And children 12 and under seem to have a bit of a different experience with COVID than students 13 and up. And part of that is attributable to the social interaction that middle and high school kids have the potential to have outside of school. K through 6 students may not be as mobile. They probably don't ride in cars as often with their friends as middle and high school students do. And so the impact does seem to be more muted on the younger students. And so I would not be surprised as we move into January and see where the numbers take us, that we would look to bringing back our younger kids and then hopefully roll into our middle and high school as well. The other part of that is bringing back all of the students, for example, at Novi Woods that want 5 days of instruction, as opposed to having 400 students in the building. You would have just 200 students in the building, which would be basically half of the students, the ones that wanted hybrid. Whereas at the high school, if you bring back the students who want hybrid, it's still almost 1,000 students. And so that still congests the hallways. It still makes lunch a little bit more problematic because it's difficult to spread out those students in a distance kind of way in the school cafeteria. And so just the volume of students at the middle and high school also makes it a little bit more problematic to bring them all back. But the goal ultimately is as hopefully numbers continue to fall, to bring them back all full time at some point during second semester.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And you promised before the meeting, Mr. Roney, that you weren't going to ask any questions. I just want to point that out to you.
Okay, that was just an inquiry.
Thank you, Mrs. Roney, for your question, and Dr. Matthews for your clarity. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Cook, please.
Yeah, kind of along the lines of what Mrs. Roney was talking about. At one time, we had talked about looking at the different groups and the data on the different groups separately so that we potentially could do that. We ran out of time to discuss it in one meeting and we were going to revisit it and we never did. Are we going to bring something like that back in for the second semester?
Yep. We had discussions about that and trying to, with our school nurse, kind of really look at the impact, you know, the number of cases that are quarantined, the number of students that test positive, the number of staff that test positive in the different buildings. You know, what we really have found is that at this point, it's the kind of the outside influences that have the most impact. Having said that, though, it is true that the majority of students that have been impacted have been at the high school level at this point. However, we have far fewer cases than almost any other district in Oakland County.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. So, Mr. Cook, in regards to that question, I think recommendation 4 was alluding to that back when we were having these discussions at the end of November. I think it was November
23rd.
23rd, yeah.
It was, yeah, I think it was both of those November meetings that we
Yes.
had. So I can work with Dr. Matthews certainly, or whoever moving forward is, you know, the leader of the team can work with Dr. Matthews after January for the January meeting, because we will have to reconfirm this once again in January. And so putting that as a recommendation, if that's something that you liked and wanted it formally approved or looked at by the board, it's something certainly that could be put back on there. I think that was our original conversations that we had about a month ago, and Dr. Matthews and I talked about that several times. And in the midst of, I will just call it the robust, chaotic conversations, it probably got lost. So.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Seeing Mr. Mena, you're just getting ready for the roll call vote. I saw you unmute yourself. Okay. So seeing none, I think we're ready for a roll call vote, Mr. Mena.
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yes.
Trustee Mena. Wow, some noise. No. Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Roney,
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin,
Yes.
Trustee Smith.
No.
Recommendation is passed 5-2. Thank you very much. And next we will move on to action item D, which is our bid package number 3, Novi Middle School additions and remodeling. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. On Tuesday, November 10th, 2020, sealed bids were received and publicly opened for Novi Middle School additions and remodeling. In attendance for the bid opening were representatives from the Novi Community School District, Plant Moran Cressa, TMP Architecture, McCarthy and Smith, and interested bidders. Bids were opened, recorded, and tabulated through a Zoom meeting. The project team conducted post-bid interviews with each of the following qualified bidders for each bid division of work. During the post-bid interview, the project team reviewed the scope of work, project schedule, manpower requirements, and specified materials with each of the contractors. Based upon the project team's review of the proposal and bidders, the following are proposed to win the contract awards, and you'll see that there are several contractors there. The total award recommendation amount is $3,244,035. This came before the board for information and discussion at the December 3rd, 2020 regular board meeting and comes back tonight for approval. We have both Bill McCarthy and Agnes Arbuckle from McCarthy Smith here this evening. If you have additional questions, They are also here for the bid package that will be in information and discussion. So don't feel obligated to ask questions if you don't have questions on this bid package, because they are also here for the other bid package. You will note, I think, that we did share additional information on the contracts, the bidding for these as well. So, but if you do have questions, either Agnes or Bill would be able to respond.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. If I can get a motion, Mr. Mena?
Yeah, I move that the board approve these contracts as presented in the amount of $3,244,035.
Support.
Recommended by Mr. Mena and supported by Mrs. Roney. And as Dr. Matthews said, Agnes and Bill are both here. We have Greg McIntyre as part of the team and Dr. Kinzer. So if you have any specific questions, please let us know. Okay, seeing none, I think that we're ready for a roll call vote, Mr. Mena.
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yeah.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Roney,
Yeah.
Trustee Ruskin,
Yes.
and Trustee Smith.
Yes.
And motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. All righty, we will move to our fifth action item, which is technology and student device purchase. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. The Instructional Technology Department is requesting that the Novi Board of Education approve the purchase of 2,200 Dell Chromebooks. The purchase is part of the district's technology commitment, which includes continuing to refresh student devices. 2,079 Chromebooks will be at their end of life on September 1st, 2020. Due to the worldwide pandemic, there are significant delays in shipping, anywhere from 3 to 6 months. The new Chromebooks will be used during the 2021-2022 academic year to continue with the district's one-to-one learning environment. The existing 2,079 devices will be recycled or reprovisioned, loaned or pooled spare parts for repairs, etc., due to Google no longer supporting those devices, not able to be used for district or state testing. The administration is recommending that the Novi Board of Education approve the following purchases from the Technology Capital Projects Bond of 2019 in the total amount of $820,600. The device purchasing is part of the RIMC Educational Cooperative Bid. The specifications of the device being purchased are Dell Chromebook 3100 2-in-1 convertible, 8 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of storage, up to 13 hours of battery, dual camera, educational design, rubberized trim and rounded corners, 1-year warranty, Google management license for life of device. The award would go to Presidio Network Solutions Group, LLC, the amount of $820,600 for the purchase of 2,200 Dell 2-in-1 touchscreen Chromebooks and the necessary Google Chrome management licenses, and it would be funded out of the 2019 School Bond Fund. Tonight we have Anthony Lucricchio, who is assigned to the district from Oakland School. We have Jeff Maas, who is Anthony's boss, who's keeping a good eye on Anthony tonight, making sure he does well. And we also have Dr. Weber, who was part of this discussion and planning. And so we would present this to the board tonight for approval so that we could get the purchase agreement in place in January so that we could get them delivered to be used, delivered in the summer, get them inventoried and ID tagged, all those kinds of things, so that they would be ready to use starting next September. And we appreciate the board's consideration to put this as an action item.
Dr. Matthews, if I can get a recommendation. Mrs. Murphy?
I move that in the best interest of Novi Community School District, the Board of Education award Presidio Network Solutions Group, LLC, the amount of $820,600 for the purchase of 2,200 Dell 2-in-1 touchscreen Chromebooks and the necessary Google Chrome management licenses to be paid out of the 2019 bond fund.
Thank you.
I'll support.
Recommended by Mrs. Murphy and supported by Mrs. Roney. We can open it up for discussions and questions. Mrs. Murphy?
Just have a quick question. The 2019 bond is the latest bond,
Yes,
correct?
it is.
Okay, okay. And this was budgeted in that anyways?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Murphy. Mr. Mena?
Right at the end of your dissertation, Dr. Matthews, you sort of answered the question that I was about to ask you. I was concerned at first that we have all these Chromebooks that are currently out, and I was afraid that we were going to actually replace those with these. But you then clarified at the end that that these wouldn't be used until September, so it would be for the next school year. Do you see, so obviously right now we have one-to-one. We certainly, especially with kids not being necessarily in the class or spending a lot of time at home, there is a need for them to have these Chromebooks. Are we still looking to continue that process as we move into the new school year, even if we're back full-time at that point?
Oh, that's a great question. I'll defer to Dr. Weber, to Anthony, or to Maz to kind of answer that question. I'll give my perspective. I think that the teachers have been developing a lot of really innovative lessons and materials that now are accessible instead of paper or textbook based. And so it would be advantageous for students to continue to have devices, but I will defer to the experts on this so that they can give you additional insight.
So from a pedagogical design and access perspective, this is something that Jeff and Anthony, Priscilla, Lisa, our tech integrators, our teachers and administrators have spoken about. And one of the nice things we can take out of a very challenging year is that this has forced us to look at how we use technology in our teaching. So we would want to continue with this effort going forward. Jeff, Anthony?
I second Dr. Weber's recommendations. I believe what we've seen is a systemic swing of technology use across the nation during this pandemic, and Novi has been very fortunate to be able to capitalize on it. Our teachers have really embraced it, our students have, and I think this will provide a driving force moving forward to continue to provide unique opportunities for our students in the future.
I'll also say that the feedback from our teaching staff on the HP devices that were purchased has been phenomenal. And I want to thank again, I don't think you can say thank you too many times in this life. So I'd like to thank Jeff and Anthony for really being the people who bird dogged that in June, saw that we needed to do it and acted on that in securing those devices. So to those two gentlemen, as well as Priscilla Miller and Lisa Whiteside for supporting our teachers every single day on how to use that technology, thank you to them as well. It's really a delight to see us in December using things, pieces of technology that we had no idea were even out there in September, and seeing the success occur from that. So thank you, gentlemen, and thank you as well to your entire team.
I know, Mr. Mena, that there has been some expression by some parents that they feel students may be using technology too much, especially when they're in person. And that continues to be a focus of ours, to ensure that the in-person experience really is a meaningful, engaged in-person experience for students, and that students aren't just pushed to a device to learn material, but they actually interact with each other and with their teachers. Technology is a driver and a way to enhance education, but it certainly is not a substitute for the teacher, and it's certainly not a substitute for the interaction that they have with other students in the classroom. And so we're very mindful of that. And as we move towards the 21-22 school year, and we anticipate that everybody will be back to in-person instruction, we would anticipate that the technology would become a very supportive device, but certainly not the primary focus of instruction, especially during in-person instruction.
Dr. Matthews, I would say that The device is just the device. That's it. Has a camera, processor, keyboard. I know, for instance, that our outreach and supporting our learners with our intervention and our tier 3 support, the primary piece of technology that we use is the camera and the microphone. And then there's the human interaction between our incredibly caring and talented service providers and intervention, and also having success in something as simple as whiteboards that we have. So I think part of the job that we need to do is to educate people in understanding that a device is very utilitarian, just like a phone now or anything else. It's that human interaction within it. And our teachers, interventionists, special education support staff are absolutely nailing it when it comes to using that technology.
Dr. Weber, Maz, go ahead.
Just for the board and the community's benefit, I'd like to just highlight that Anthony and our tech team, we're enhancing these devices a little bit to provide some future proofing. As Chromebooks have a finite lifespan, unlike some of the other devices out there, Google kind of suspends their updates after 5 or 6 years. We're increasing the RAM on these devices to future-proof them a little bit, knowing that we're probably in the last generation of the 4 gig RAM Chromebook. So by upgrading them now, because they're not future upgradable, we believe that this will be benefit 3 years down the road when these devices start to be, again, get a little older, things change, but we're kind of future-proofing them and anticipating changes in the technology. I just wanted the board to understand that. I know Mr. Mena sometimes looks at the technical specs a little closer, so just wanted to highlight that for everyone.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cook, please.
Yeah, with how many total Chromebooks do we have in the district now? And are we going to be seeing a slug of 2,000, 2,200 coming through every year, every 2 years to keep the inventory refreshed and try to prevent the end of life situation that apparently we're into here, because these reach the end of life in September. And then also, I see we're just going with the standard with the 1 year warranty. I thought in the past we had done extended warranties on some of them. And I'm just curious as to why we're not considering that, or if we need to, or if it didn't justify, pay for itself last time.
So I'll work backwards, Mr. Cook. What I found and what we found is the warranty on the Chromebooks with the device price and paying that premium doesn't always justify the means. So we're saving it on the front side, and we'll be able to buy some unallocated devices and kind of do a self kind of insured future proofing instead of paying up front for a warranty. Chromebooks are much different than Windows laptops. So the warranty doesn't cover quite as much. Basically there's a lightweight processor, some RAM, and we've seen very few manufacturer defects. So we felt that it wasn't a good investment for the district to extend the warranty. I'll have to defer to Anthony on the exact number of Chromebooks. I think we're in the 6,000 number, but you are right. You will see an annual type investment in our technology as devices become obsolete, and then also replacing those devices that may be broken, damaged, lost throughout the one-to-one. So we did talk about that, I believe, when we brought the devices last year in the one-to-one, having the kind of an annual purchase. This happened to be one of those bubble years because it was one of the early adoptions of our Chromebook fleet. So you kind of see that. Anthony and I believe, we can put something together and kind of give the board a projection of estimated devices moving forward of what you might anticipate. So you have a better understanding of that. But I'll defer to Anthony as well to provide some input on, where we're at on device counts.
Yep. So currently we've got just over 6,300 Chromebooks out, and the 2,079 that will be expiring September 1st. That's obviously what we're asking the board to approve for the evening. The next round, there'll be 921 that will be expiring on June 1st of 2022. And then the next large expiration will be just over 3,300 Chromebooks, June 1st of 2026. So again, these devices generally have a 5-year lifespan, and then Google stops supporting them and updating them. And then what we plan to do with the current models, those 2079 that are out, that we're going to bring back in that expire, we can use those for repurposing. We can put those out for loaner devices. We can also use them for repair parts. And the device that we're asking the board to order, we currently have that model in. We've already had them for another year, so we're really happy with that. We've put it up against another vendor, and my team are very confident with this model.
Murphy?
I do think it would be helpful, Maz, you had suggested like, so that we could see kind of the rotation, that we have that for our buses, I think, as well, at least at one point in time. So just kind of being able to visualize that as we go to approve things as to like what's coming up in the future, that might be something really helpful for the board to have.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mrs. Murphy. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Seeing none, Mr. Mena, I believe that we are all ready for a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yes.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy, Trustee Murphy.
Yes.
Okay, Trustee Roney,
Yes.
Trustee Ruskin,
Yes.
and Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Hey, Tom, if you're able to mute yourself, unmute yourself just before you speak, because that was your background noise that was popping through.
I'm sorry, my flight board's in about 5 minutes, so I'll be cutting off in a minute.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Next, we have information and discussion. So we have 2 items in this area. We will start with the COVID metrics to change learning modalities. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. I did provide the board with a report that's in the board packet, but I'd like to, instead of reviewing that with the board, I'd like to review with you a conversation that we were finally able to have with Oakland County Health Division today. After the last board meeting, it appeared that the board had a desire for us to have a conversation with Oakland County Health, so I reached out to them. It took until today for us to have that conversation, but we were finally able to have that conversation with the epidemiologist today. And I've talked to her on several different occasions. Today I brought along Dr. Kinzer and Mr. McIntyre, along with our nurse Kathy Ferris, to have that conversation about, is there a set of numbers that we as a district need to be looking at as we consider bringing our students back 5 days a week. And so I'd like to review that with you, and then I can share this out with the board tomorrow in the weekly packet, so you can have this and look at it as well. But after our last meeting, I reached out to the Oakland County Health Division to discuss with them this topic of metrics. I wanted to get their expert opinion on what metrics we should focus on as we contemplate a return to 5-day per week in-person instruction for our hybrid students. This afternoon, we were finally able to talk with the epidemiologist, Kaylee Blaney, from the Oakland County Health Division. On the call, as I said, I had Dr. Kinzer, Mr. McIntyre, and our school nurse, Kathy Ferris. I'd spoken with her, the epidemiologist, several times before, most recently about the vast difference between our zip code numbers and our school district numbers. In the report to the board this evening, I shared what Ms. Blaney had said about the discrepancy in those numbers. And she had said, there are people that live in what is considered to be a Novi zip code, but are not in the Novi School District. For example, my apartment complex is on the corner of Beck and Pontiac Trail, which is Novi 48377. However, our school district is Walled Lake. My complex is rather large, so any COVID cases would count for the zip code 48377 Novi, but appear in the district data for Walled Lake. Similarly, a large chunk of southern Novi is Northville schools, which would go to the Northville district data, but the Novi zip code data. Same goes for a small area that is Novi, but South Lyon schools. We had a handful of parents that shared with us ideas on their perspective about the metrics to be used, and I shared those with the board in the report that I provided in the packet this evening. In our conversation with the epidemiologists today, we focused on 3 metrics that I identified for the board to consider. 1, the Oakland County cases per million. 2, the Oakland County test positivity. And 3, the Novi Community School District cases per 10,000 residents. The epidemiologists shared these comments. The cases per million does not give a true perspective on what is happening in Novi. What the Oakland County Health Division has found is wide variation across the county. Cases in another part of the county can really drive the cases per million number in the county up, while the risk in Novi could be substantially lower. Ms. Blaney stated that as this virus continues, it is likely that the only people who will be tested as we move forward are likely to be positive cases. As a result, this will drive the percent positivity number higher. What this means is that it is likely that there will not be much variation in that number, and it may even go higher. However, it would not be a true indicator because it would not represent a larger population of residents taking the test. The most accurate number, according to Ms. Blaney, would be the cases per 10,000 residents in the Novi Community School District. The report today identified that our district is at 48.3 cases per 10,000 residents. Last week, we were at 57.4 cases per 10,000 residents, and the week before, we were at 61.7 cases per 10,000 residents. We asked about the guidance on in-person instruction document that the state and subsequently Oakland County put forth for districts to use. My sense of her perspective on that was that the numbers exploded well past their guide and that it was not as useful as it was imagined it would be. The issue of what is safe was discussed. She indicated that you can't put a number on safe. The only number that is quote unquote safe would be 0, and we will not get to that number. Given that, districts need to decide their tolerance for safety. She indicated that many districts in the county discovered that 50 cases per 10,000 residents was leading to widespread quarantines of staff and students and impacting operations in a district. She advised 2 important things. 1, continue to use mitigation strategies as much as possible. Mandatory masks, hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, increased ventilation, regular cleaning of common touch points, social distance. On social distance, she suggested that getting as much distance as possible when 6 feet was not possible was the best strategy. Even if we return, we should look to keep as much social distance as possible. 2 to 3 feet is much better than desks close together. Instead of a hard number, or 2, instead of a hard number, identify a threshold that would create an opportunity for the district to reevaluate. She suggested that the threshold be lower than 40 cases per 10,000 residents. She suggested 30 to 35 cases per 10,000 residents would be appropriate. At that point, after 2 weeks of data at or below that point, we could identify how to use our mitigation strategies to ensure that we are creating as safe of conditions as possible if we were to bring back all of the hybrid students into classrooms. In asking about the impact on our different ages, it is true that students under the age of 12 are less impacted. Generally, that is because their quote unquote risk behaviors, congregating with friends, riding in cars with non-family members, are less than with middle and high school students. Additionally, they are generally healthy. So where does all that leave us? The vaccine will not impact schools much this winter into spring because it is unlikely that we will get significant numbers of both staff or students vaccinated. Additionally, on a later call this afternoon, it was recommended that we not mandate the use of the vaccine at this time because it was approved under emergency authorization. So we are committed to our approach through January 22nd. I would recommend that we focus on our Novi Community School District cases per 10,000 as the key number. I would also recommend that we look at 35 or lower for 2 weeks as the key starting point. Finally, I would want us to wait to see what the 3 weeks after the new year bring us in terms of cases. The holiday surge, will it happen? It did not happen in November as it was anticipated. And so that is good news. So as we look to January, the question is, will that good news continue? Tonight, I do not believe the board has to decide. I think a prudent strategy of waiting until January, examining the numbers, and waiting to see if the current trend continues is the wisest course of action. Finally, I would encourage the board to let the administration continue to update you and to focus on the cases per 10,000 in our district as the key number. I don't know if Dr. Kinzer or Mr. McIntyre has any additional comments about the conversation that we had with the epidemiologist this afternoon.
I think that you summarized the conversation very effectively.
Steve, I'm taking it you were reading that information. Can you make sure you send that out? Maybe send that out to us?
Yep, I will send that out tomorrow in the weekly.
Okay, thank you.
I wrote that up after our conversation with the epidemiologist this afternoon. We started the conversation by looking at the recommendation that I had put in the board packet today, and her first words were, I wouldn't use the numbers that you had identified. And then she gave us the rationale for the cases per million in the county. She said the numbers that are driving that right now are the numbers in the north of the county, and they really don't reflect the impact in the southern, which is at this point is less. And then she also indicated that the testing, most as we move forward, the testing is really going to be about those people who already have COVID, and so the number is likely to stay the same. But she did say that the cases per 10,000 in our district is really the key number for her. And as you can see, our numbers went up to a high of over 60 cases per 10,000. And now they have dropped to 48.3 cases per 10,000 for the last 2 week period. And she said that what they found this fall was that it was around the 50 cases per 10,000 that really started to impact districts having to quarantine staff, having to quarantine large numbers of students. So she would say that 40 is probably a bit too high, that we should look to a lower number, 30 to 35 was her recommendation. And that if we had that for 2 weeks in a row, that she would feel more confident about us bringing back students to school 5 days a week. And so that number, that school district number, is really the key number that she's looking at, and not the zip code number, not the cases per million, and not the test positivity.
So go ahead, Mr. Mena. I have a few comments too, but you go first.
Okay, I did have a bunch of questions, but I think now that a lot of my questions had to do with the fact that originally I think you had 4 different metrics that you were looking at. I think in your intro to this, I think inadvertently or not, you dropped the 4th one, which was student attendance, right?
Yeah, student attendance.
Okay, so then really what we did is we just kept the 3rd one, or C, the cases in the school district per 10,000, except instead of 40, you're recommending that we go to 35.
Yeah, no, that was the recommendation made by the epidemiologist at Oakland County Health Division.
So my question is that where can a person see that data? Is that data posted anywhere?
The numbers in the school district?
In the school district, correct.
Yes. If you go to the oakgov.com website and click on their COVID button, if you go down to, they have two dashboards. Let me get to it. Two dashboards. One is the Oakland County dashboard, and that dashboard gives the numbers, the cases per million, 7-day average, the counts per day, rolling 7-day average. And she said those were not overly helpful because they're too broad. And so the Oakland County case maps is where you want to go. And the case maps has by zip code, recent cases by zip code. There's 3 tabs: recent cases by zip code, total cases by zip code, and then current cases by school district. And that's the tab you want to go to, current cases by school district. And the unfortunate part of that is they don't have rolling numbers there. They just have the last 2-week average. And so the most current data that's up there is from the time period of December 3rd through December 16th, that 2-week period, and we're at 48.3. And we've asked them to provide that historical data so that we could see the every 2-week average. They do not provide it here, but I provide it, and I can share it with the board, and we can also get that out to the community.
Okay, I did find that link, so thank you. I'll just have to make sure I bookmark it. There really isn't any great metrics to use. I'm always concerned with just using case counts, only because it doesn't take into account the number of tests that were taken in order to get that number. So obviously, the more folks who take tests, the higher that number will obviously go, right?
Yeah,
that was the nice thing about positivity rate, was that at least it took into account the number of folks that were taking the tests. But again, as you mentioned before, if we get to a point where only people who take the test are people who likely have COVID, then that number could start going. That percentage can start swaying pretty heavily to the northern end, closer to 100. So, okay, certainly good info. Thank you.
You're welcome. And again, the key for us, I think, is what's going to happen in January. I think that we had a great November. The period after Thanksgiving through the end of December here. Everybody was anticipating that counts were going to go up, and they have not. They've actually dropped. And my hope is that they continue to do that, because if they do, I would anticipate that we would get kids back to school sooner rather than later.
If I may, looking at that map right now, the data time period that they have now on here shows 12/3 to 12/16. So the numbers that are being reported here are a 2-week set of numbers.
Yep, and they do that every week. And so next week it'll be 12/10 through 12/23, and so it's a rolling 2-week average.
So how are you going to? I'm just trying to figure out exactly how you're going to calculate whether or not we're meeting that metric. Is it 40 cases per 1,000 for a 2-week reporting period, or for a 1-week reporting period?
Well, the key is that they provide that number every Thursday. And so while it's a 2-week average, they report the number every 2 weeks. And so that's one thing that we would have to decide. Would we want it to be, for a month period that we would have the 35 or below, or would we want it just to be the 2-week reporting periods to be 35 or below? And so I think we could have additional discussion on that as we move forward.
Okay. Yeah, I have to just kind of chew on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll send out the rolling 2-week averages that I have for the last, since September, so the board can see those.
I want to make a quick comment, and then Mr. Cook, you'll be next. Is that good?
It's fine.
Okay. So when I first looked at this, and it's hard pressed to be arguing with the epidemiologist, so I feel like, with all due respect, I really did like multiple metrics, and I don't know if 3 is too many, because I really am not here to cause any restrictions, or, I mean, I want to get our kids back in school, and I have high hopes that that is going to happen in second semester, and believe that it will. I thought originally, when looking at this, that the cases 40 per 10,000 was rather high, because when we first started school, it was probably in the, I think it was 18, 20, and it's slowly creeped up. And that just is a small area. But that being said, I was okay with that high number, because there was like a checks and balances. There was another metrics to balance that. And I felt like the Oakland County 7-day cases per million at 70 it's a pretty hard ask. I mean, we're at 485 or 600 in the last couple of weeks. So to get from that level of 600 all the way down to 70, we have a ways to go. And being at 70, I would feel pretty comfortable that we were in a good place. So even if there was 40 cases per 10,000, I mean, you can have an outbreak at an assisted living on Taft or Beck Road and have 40 cases per 10,000 within our school district. So I felt like it was kind of giving us a checks and balances of what's really happening in our small school district boundaries, but also taking into account those little flaws that could occur, and then what's happening in Oakland County where people travel and all of that. So I know that Mr. Cook did ask for metrics, multiple metrics being multiple. And I did support that, because I felt like we've been following this cases per 10,000 all along, although we didn't have such a high number. And I think that that will help as we really are getting to know exactly what's happening here. The vaccine is being rolled out. Yes, it's not going to affect our teachers maybe for a little while, but who knows who is living in those homes. I mean, they could be living with an ER physician who is already vaccinated and was vaccinated this past week. I mean, there's a lot of factors that we really just don't have the answers for. And then I certainly think that if indeed we're going to go with one particular metric, that I think it's super important that we circle back around, like Mr. Cook pointed out with that recommendation for, that we are truly looking at students and schools based on a K-6 and a 712 and an NATC approach, because as you pointed out, 12 years and younger, it affects them differently. We still have the adults working in the classrooms, there's a lot of factors, but I think that then breaking it down to bringing kiddos back sooner, the more at high risk. So I liked this original approach that you came up with by yourself, but now you've brought the epidemiologist in the mix, which is important. And it's good to hear from the expert. I think that that is super critical. And I don't want to sit here and start acting or thinking that I'm smarter than that person, because I'm certainly not. But I am a little hesitant to not have more than one metric, is my point.
I would agree. I'm uncomfortable at some level staking our claim to one metric, but she was pretty clear, and I think Dr. Kinzer and Mr. McIntyre would confirm that she was pretty clear that those other two metrics she didn't have a great deal of confidence in.
Mr. Cook,
Yeah, I'm kind of gonna reiterate what you said. Multiple metrics are for the checks and balances and stuff. Because if you go by the district cases per 10,000, when we started school, it was 8.8. Okay, and it didn't hit 30. Didn't even hit 30 until the beginning of November. So 40, 35, if you're just only using that one number, to me seems very high. We should have been full-time back then.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we would have been in the same situation a lot of the other school districts are, bouncing back and forth. Fortunately, we didn't go by one metric then. And, so switching to one metric now, I'm not too confident in. For those who want to know, the numbers by district per 10,000 are on page 47 of the board book here, of the pamphlet. So, being at, 57 last week, and what was it, 48 this week?
Yep.
We're still high. We haven't gone down. Looking at the rate of change is another factor that we could add in there on that number. It does stay local. Change from one week to the next, whether it's positive or negative, and only 2 weeks I'm not too sure of, because from what I've heard other epidemiologists say, you don't start showing symptoms for 10 days, but you don't even go into the hospital until you've had it for 10 days. So that's almost 20 days, almost 3 weeks. So is 2 weeks being down enough, or should it be 3? I go back to, I like multiple metrics and combining them, and I like keeping things local. The cases per million in Oakland County, being more in the north, that's where the population of the district of the county is, Pontiac and those areas. So I can understand that skewing that data higher. So, I think I'm still going to push for multiple metrics.
And I appreciate that. As I said, I'm a little uncomfortable putting a stake in the ground, saying that one measure is the only one we should look at. But she was pretty clear. I'm gonna work with the team here, and we're gonna try to examine data and see if we can identify other local data that we could use as well. Because I do think it's important that when we make a decision, that it's a really good decision, so that we don't bounce around in and out of school like other districts have done in the county, because that is really disruptive to education. And that's why, for example, when the state came out in middle of November, and said they're taking a 3-week pause, we said we're going to extend that through tomorrow, December 18th, because we didn't want students to bounce around between hybrid one week, and then virtual for 3 weeks, and then hybrid for 7 days. And so we understand that consistency is really important. And so that's why, if we can identify some multiple measures to look at and to use before we jump back into 5-day instruction, I think it's important. But from her perspective, the best number is that cases per 10,000 in our district. And the number 50 is where districts started to get in trouble. And she said, if you start at 40, you're going to be you could get very close to that 50 very quickly. And that would potentially lead you to stop, going in and out of school, which is what we want to avoid. And so perhaps 35 is too high. Perhaps it needs to be 30 or 25. We pressed her and said, what's the magic number? And she said, there is no magic number.
And we understand that. And we also understand that when we pick a number or a date, and we've gotten burned by that, you pick a date, and the community is going to hold you to that.
Yeah.
So you pick the number of 35, we go down to 34 and then 33 for a couple of weeks, and they're going to say, why aren't we back to school then? We weren't even at school when we were at 8 or 9. So, I think we need to be very confident in the numbers we pick here, that it's going to be safe for the students, safe for the staff, and, that we're not going to be, causing any disruption and have to bounce in and out.
Yep,
so.
I would agree with you. I think it's really important that we remember that as a district, we have been very consistent since September 8th. We have done a great job of ensuring that our students are safe, and that we've done a great job of maintaining a consistent learning approach. Now, there's been pushback about the approach that we've chosen, the 2 days and the virtual day and those kinds of things. And there's plenty of room for us to have those discussions, but we have been consistent. And the reports that we get from our buildings are that students understand what the routine is, parents understand what the routine is. We are making it work. Our students are coming to school. They're being successful, and we are working really hard to ensure that we provide a positive learning experience for those students.
Yeah, you know, I just saw the number 4.9 on here back in beginning of October. So get 35 is a long ways from that. So
Yeah, I would agree.
so I think we really need to multiple metrics, whether it's the rate of change, what that ends up looking like, or finding something other local. That's why I'd suggest the attendance. And reading through the board book here, I can understand why the attendance is going to be a little bit more difficult because we're doing so much online or virtual learning. And but I was just trying to find something else that's local and not being distorted by a highly dense population.
And I would encourage all of you as board members to continue to think that through. And as you get ideas, please share them with me and the rest of the cabinet, because we are certainly receptive to having additional discussions to make sure we get this right.
No, there's no right answer. It's going to be the best, the best answer that we can come up with, and we'll follow through with it.
Yep, I agree.
I do think that and then Mrs. Roney, I see you raising your hand. If you really look at these charts and maybe laying them all out together, when you as an administrative team look at these, there does seem to be, no matter what metric you're looking at, you can find the space and the time that they all increased. So no matter how they increased, whether they increased, positivity rate, whether they increased the zip codes that were used, or whether they increased per million, there's a space and time that's on there that you can actually see that they all increased, maybe not at the same rate, but there was an increase. And so I feel that really shows that having multiple metrics, yes, they're measuring different things, but you're going to see some type of increase that's linear and that goes along the same path. So, or hopefully goes down. That's what we're going to go for. Real positive. Mrs. Roney.
Okay, this is just an inquiry. Of course, you're going to see a trend, hopefully across the board in all of them. But, we talk about numbers and such, but I think there needs to be something with the staff, because if we don't have the teachers there, of course, we can't be in school. And, yes, the K through 6, 12 and under, but I mean, the last time I checked, the teachers were a little older than that. So there's, I don't know what kind of, but, some type of, staff attendance, because of COVID or whatnot, I think would be helpful too, to see, a chart like, this week we're this way, this week we're this way. So, I mean, and it should follow the trend of what the district is, hopefully.
That's good. We could certainly do that. I look at attendance reports every morning, and so I know we have that data, so we could certainly take a look at perhaps that's a good data point for us to use as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Roney. Mr. Mena?
Well, Dr. Matthews, nobody's ever alleged that you've been undercautious here. That's for sure. I do like this metric. The only thing as I think has been mentioned is making sure that whatever we come up with here, that there's a buffer, right? Because if we have a firm line, right, we go over and under, we're in and out of school, so we have to find what that's what that sweet spot is. In essence, if we get the kids to school, right, how bad does it have to get before we have to shift again, right? So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mena. Any other questions?
This is an ongoing conversation. As I said, we have the numbers of today. We have the recommitment surveys of parents. We're planning for second semester. The goal is for us to find ways to get students back as we move through second semester. I would not anticipate that by January 25th that we would be able to do that. But I would anticipate that sometime during second semester, we're going to bring all those hybrid kids back into school. And I'm really committed to us finding a way for us to measure that and to make sure that we're doing it the right way. As Ms. Blaney talked about it, she said Novi has done a great job of being consistent in our approach to education this year. And she really complimented us on that. And that's what I want to have continue throughout second semester, is that we're going to be consistently providing students a routine so that they can be successful as we go through the rest of the school year.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. So any other board members have any comments or questions, then you can certainly send them to the administration, the cabinet team, so they can continue to look at this and come back with more information and discussion on this piece. Okay. So hearing no other questions or comments at this time, I think we'll move on to the next information and discussion piece, which is the bid package number 4, Novi High School Secure Additions. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. On Thursday, November 24th, 2020, sealed bids were received and publicly opened for the Novi. Whoops, am I reading the right one? We have the Novi High School. This should say Novi High School. And this is the recommendation for the Novi High School, which is would be $3,738,777. And it comes to the board tonight for information and discussion. I will let Agnes kind of describe what these bids are for. And if the board has any questions about these bids, we have the conversation on the high school secure entry, the actual letter from McCarthy Smith to Mr. McIntyre. We also have additional information on the bids that were provided to us and the decisions that were made. But I will let Agnes kind of talk through how the process went and give us some perspective for the board. And if you have questions, you can certainly ask either Agnes or Bill about those bids. Agnes.
Sure. So this rounds out our bidding process this winter. This is our 4th bid package, and this is the high school. This is the 2 additions, one on the east end and west end. That will be started construction this winter, and we'll be doing the west addition starting out this winter, and then we'll start the east addition summer. So we're gonna space them out so we're not taking over both entrances and basically activated one after it's completed and switch over to the other one. From bidding perspective, the overall, we've come in pretty good, considering that now the bidding season is revving up. And I think we got a lot of bidders, a lot of good, especially in the categories that we were mostly concerned about. We did not include in this package the mechanical number, the HVAC number, which is bid division 142. Reason being is that we found that there was a mandatory alternate that the contractors bid, that after further review, we found that we actually need to expand that mandatory alternate. This is for snow melt system at the entrances. And we've put that out for rebid. And we're actually going to be collecting bids on that tomorrow. But not to delay further approval for all the other contractors. We are holding an estimate value for that. And as you can see, even with the estimate, we're significantly under budget. I would love to take the credit for all the under budget, but the reality is that the original planning during the bond was significantly larger. It was 1 addition, and now we ended up with 2 additions, which actually allowed the high school get what they want for space and location versus the overage in square footage. And it actually resulted in a significant savings. So when we originally did the budget, we would have been, with the budget that we originally presented, we would have been about $400,000 under, but due to the reduced square footage and in actual construction, you know, we have a more significant variance. This will be, you know, these will be the beacon entrances to the new high school. I think you've seen some of the drawings and sketches, and definitely something different, lots of glass and open canopies, more of a welcoming, I would say more of a welcoming appearance that really signifies where the entrances are, both for the visitor and students. That's really in summary, that's really where we are. Overall, pretty good numbers, and we've added, like you requested, the bid ranges for the low and high. And I think you must have seen the drawings because I've asked Sheila to forward those on to you.
And Agnes, I think we should point out that through the course of the post-bid interviews, it was discovered that there's a number of bidders that were actually going to the second low bidder because of
Yep.
issues associated with the bids. And probably the most, that's not uncommon to see a second low bidder, to go to a second low bidder, but we do have probably an most interesting case with one of the divisions of work. Agnes, you want to share about the steel?
Sure. So steel on this project is a little bit more complicated than our typical projects. So we actually went through a very extensive post-bid interview for all 4 contractors. And as you notice in your package, we have an explanation. So the first bidder actually withdrew his bid, an error. The second contractor, we felt that based on the previous experience and really the qualifications they've had, they could not meet the requirements of the job. This is a very complex weld job for the canopy and the other members, where you have to have certification and a lot of field welding, a lot of on-site construction and assembly. And then we went to the third bidder, and after review with him, he actually did not include a lot of the welding, the ASCC weld quality level. So he was automatically disqualified. So we ended up moving on to Judd Steel, who's has quite a bit extensive experience in this type of work. They're a Detroit company that this is more than a wheelhouse of theirs, and they have certified and qualified on-staff welders and assemblers that this is what they do. So this was a little bit different, but we've actually gone and developed a full matrix to track and get all the data of how they're going to go about their work, and compared all their hours and vetted out how they're going to assemble it, how they're going to support it. It became really a discovery exercise on our part. So, obviously we appreciate all their hard work, but that's what it took.
We do appreciate hearing we're under budget. So don't be so humble, and we'll just go with that. But no, we do appreciate the explanation and also all your due diligence in finding those little intricacies so that everybody doesn't find themselves in a tricky spot as the work is beginning, and having bids that aren't actually what the district was looking to accomplish. So very much appreciated. Any comments or questions?
This would come back to the board on January 7th. As the board reviews all of this, if you have additional questions after tonight, you can certainly reach out to me, to Mr. McIntyre, to Dr. Kinzer, and we would get those questions to the team so that we could have answers for you before January 7th.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. Mrs. Murphy?
Not really a question, but just a request that going forward, if we could have the drawings attached in the board packet as, I mean, obviously the, Chromebooks or whatever, but other bid things that we want to, it helps me to be able to visualize that, just as Agnes is talking about. So I know she had us, Sheila sent them over to us, but I think that if we just include them in the board packet in the future,
okay,
if we're talking about some of those structural things, I think that would be helpful.
Thank you, Mrs. Murphy. Mrs. Hood?
Yeah, I think Agnes explained this, but it went over my head. So this bid is for both entrances, and we are staggering the construction one and then the other. So, for example, the Judd steel that you just walked us through, that $700,000 bid is for both entrances.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Cook?
Just kind of a procedural thing. When you end up with a lot of bidders that don't bid to the specification, do you have a process where you go back and review your specs and make sure that they were clear and concise, or make sure there's, it wasn't something on our end that goofed all these, bidders up?
No, so actually for something as intricate as steel, where we get into real minute details, we actually had the structural engineer on all the calls and the architect, and each of us went through our section of requirements. So the engineer in this case actually went through his specifications, and he had, since we all knew that the welding was critical, and then there was the different level of expectations of what we typically have. He went through those, and some contractors just miss it, and until you call it out specifically in a post-bid interview, you say, did you include, this certificate? Do your people are certified? Do they have? Because there's a difference between shop certification and field certification. So until you start asking those questions, sometimes some things just slip to them, and maybe the estimated missed it altogether. And that's what we found that in third bidder, they did not include that, and that would have resulted in another $45,000 ad, which regardless, it actually ended up making them high. So it really wasn't relevant. But yes, almost each of us has our own list of questions, but in this specific, I'm not going to play an expert. I know of structural steel, but we've called in backup, so to speak, and had all the right experts on the call.
Dr. Matthews said we can submit any questions to the team and he'll get the answers back to us. So if there's nothing pressing, no? Okay. Thank you both for being on our call this evening, and have a happy holiday. And we appreciate the work that you do for our district.
Thank you, you too.
Stay well.
Appreciate it.
Good night.
Next, we have our committee reports. We have a committee report from the Capital Projects Committee, Mr. Mena.
See, let me unmute. Yes, we had a meeting, not a lot on the agenda. We did spend most of the agenda talking about the presentation that we're working on the Walsh College property. So I would imagine you'll be seeing something from that shortly. And then we also did talk about the closeout of the 2020 bond projects, and again, some of the bids that are coming, and actually the one that was before us today.
Thank you, Mr. Mena. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have our second opportunity from comments from the audience. So again, there's a Google document, and Dr. Matthews, do we have any more comments from the audience?
We have 73 comments from the audience. No, we have 0 additional comments from the audience.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll move right on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. My report tonight is brief, and it's one of thanks. I would like to extend our thanks to the students in our district this year. They have been asked to engage in new and unique ways of learning, and they have done such a great job this year that I really, really do appreciate all the hard work that they have gone through to continue learning in our district. To our parents, I would like to express my thanks for their support, their encouragement, their questions. They're pushing us to make sure that we are meeting the needs of our students, and they have helped us get better this fall. and I would very much like to express my thanks to them. To the board, I would like to express my thanks because you have been asked to make some very hard and difficult decisions that no board before you has really had to make. And you have done so in a very collaborative way. You have pushed each other, which is okay. You have helped us to make sure that we are providing the best product we can to the students in our district. And so I would like to express my thanks to the board. To our staff, all of our staff, our teachers, our bus drivers, our food service people, our custodians, our tech people, our secretaries, our parapros, the early childhood center staff, they have been exceptional this year. They have done far and above what they have typically been asked to do in a school year. And what they typically do in a school year is tremendous. What they typically do is provide such a high quality service. And they have continued to do that, but they have also continued to find new ways to meet the needs of all of our students. And so I really am so deeply appreciative of all that they have done. And finally, to my administrative team, they have been asked to think about, consider things in ways that they have never had to before. And they have really risen to the occasion, and I am so appreciative of them. So in this season where we count our blessings, I am so thankful to be in this district, to be surrounded by people who care deeply for the students and families in our district. And I would just like to express my thanks to everyone and wish everyone that they have a great and happy, safe holiday season. So thank you, Dr. Ruskell.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. And as always, we appreciate you and your leadership. We will move on to administrative reports, and we will start with Mr. McIntyre.
I would like to thank all my cabinet members for helping getting the budget prepared for this year. And I also want to thank the board for approving the budget, and to also let you know that I will be meeting with stakeholders when we get back from break. And I want to wish everyone a happy holiday.
Thank you, Mr. McIntyre, and happy holiday to you and your family. Next, we have Dr. Kinzer.
Thank you. I have a very specific gratitude. Dr. Matthews mentioned our childcare staff. Since the beginning of the school year, we've offered a unique form of childcare this year specifically for our teachers. And we've utilized childcare staff as well as some of our parapros in the district. And they have done just an absolutely fantastic job providing space and care for our children of our teachers to do their virtual schooling. And it's really what's driven our ability to program and staff. So I just want to make sure everyone is aware of the fantastic job they've done stepping up to take on that challenge. So thank you. And then I would also echo Dr. Matthews and Mr. McIntyre in wishing everyone a very happy holiday.
Thank you, Dr. Kinzer. Thank you. Dr. Weber?
You're on mute, Dr. Weber. One of the few times in history that I can say that.
Having significant technical issues here tonight. I actually am on my phone right now that's propped up on top of a computer screen because something isn't working. But I found a quote that I really love tonight about gratitude. And it's from Robert, let me see, Benigni. I think he's an Italian actor. And it says, it's a sign of mediocrity when you demonstrate gratitude with moderation. I have no interest in being mediocre. And so I will say, I absolutely cannot thank the community, our administrators, our teachers, and as Dr. Matthews said, everyone within this system that's helped us. And it may sound a little bit like hubris, but listening to the comments earlier, I'm hearing districts having plans for what they're going to do in the future. I guess I'll see when they actually execute and make it happen, as we've made it happen since September 8th. In order to have this opportunity for our children in this hybrid opportunity, there's a ton of things behind the scenes that people may not see, like, for instance, at least members of the Office of Academics team who are substituting in classrooms, substituting as administrators to keep that opportunity open for our children. And what that means then is taking all of that work home that they missed during the day, on the weekend, and at night. I will be forever grateful to the people I serve beside, having a front row seat to see the very best of humanity in one of the most challenging global times in the history of the world, frankly, has been an absolute pleasure. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to science. This week, the vaccines rolled out from Pfizer in Michigan, and there's a lot of pride there. And it does connect to what we believe in this community school district, which is a K-12 science program that values science, values the time, the energy, the resources, and the instruction. And lo and behold, science is very well going to turn the course of this horrific situation. Also, I'd also like to express my gratitude to community members. I shared it on Twitter, but I myself am recovering from COVID. I contracted, I don't know where I contracted it. Could be in service to your children, could be somewhere out in the community, but it's very real. It's not a joke. Many people in my life have been negatively impacted by my positive test, including 6 of my own colleagues here who have had to quarantine away from their family for 2 weeks because of it. I deeply appreciate Dr. Matthews' approach to this from the beginning. And if anybody would like to have a conversation with me about the impact and the real impact of COVID, I'm happy to share it. And I am exceptionally grateful to our nurse, Kathy Ferris, who was my first call when I realized I was positive, and she guided myself and my family through a very difficult situation. So much love and respect to each of you out there who keep on doing what we need to do for our children and for each other. May you have a fantastic couple of weeks, unencumbered by all sorts of things that encumber us now, and you can rest. And to my core team, Dr. Matthews, Dr. Kinzer, and Mr. McIntyre, thank you so much. Having a front row seat, serving beside you, and seeing what you do and how you fight for each family in our district is a pleasure. So be well, continue good work, and stay away from the COVID. Thanks.
Thanks, Dr. Weber. And we're glad you're well and in your office working. All righty. We now have an opportunity for board communication. If anyone has anything, Mrs. Murphy, please.
First, I want to apologize. I had to keep going off the video because of my dog. So he has been sick today. So that is why I took the video off, because I turned my volume up and I would have to see what he was puking on or whatever. So anyways, I do apologize, but that's been my day-to-day cleaning up after the dog. So I believe someone has a birthday coming up, Dr. Matthews. So I just want to wish you a happy birthday in a couple days. And also just to say to my fellow board members, it is a pleasure serving again with you this year. I really do wish you all a very happy holiday.
Thank you, Mrs. Murphy. Any other board communication? Mrs. Hood?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of echo what Dr. Matthews said, and I was reading today. I'm generally not a fan of when an environment of survival of the fittest is really the operative who gets out alive. But thinking about our teachers and our kids, and I've always felt that kids are really resilient. You put them in a situation, and if they don't have some preconceived notion of what's good or bad about it, they will accept it and just keep moving through. And so, you know, what Darwin said was survival depends not on toughness, but on adapting to circumstances. And gosh, if everybody who has been mentioned tonight, every group, if they didn't adapt to circumstances over the last 6 months, we would be in a world of hurt. And I think everyone, I won't say the board, everyone deserves a pat on the back for getting us to where we are. And I'm going to say thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hood, for your kind words to our district employees and students and community members. Mrs. Roney, please.
I just want to thank Gary for letting us know. I had no idea that our staff was, our childcare, they were doing that. I mean, I think that's wonderful. That's just another, way that we've been able to keep our teachers and our students in classroom, I mean, so that is great. Thank you so much. And RJ, I'm glad you're still here with us. We would miss you. And everyone have a great holiday. Kick your feet up if you can after, those eggnogs and cookies. So have a good one.
Thank you, Mrs. Roney. Thank you, Mrs. Roney. Any other board comments? Board communication? Okay. I did want to make a comment. I'd be remiss if I started pointing out people to thank, so I'm not going to do such, because I do thank you privately and via email and text message. But during the conversation about technology, I found it to be just super positive, because I thought, yes, technology is a double-edged sword. It's a love-hate relationship. And as it was pointed out, it really is just a piece of plastic. It's the humans behind it. And as I watch on Twitter and I watch the staff and all the exciting, fancy things they do, and I've only learned how to do Zoom, so that's the extent of what I've learned during this time. But we have the peach jar from George Sipple, and we have teachers using Paradox and all these really wonderful things. And so, I think it's positive. I think COVID pushed us to do things that maybe would have been years down the line. And I think there was an accelerated piece to what has happened. And we will come out of that in 1 year, which may have taken people and the district and students and everyone involved 5 to 10 years. So I think when we look back on where we've come, where we started and where we've come, that we will have some really positive attributes to 2020. So I was excited to write 2021 today on a patient's appointment card. And so I'm just going to continue to do that. I have, some optimistic thoughts that things are going to improve. So have a wonderful holiday, everyone. And you're all very appreciated, including our community members, if any of them are watching. So I will take a motion to adjourn, if anyone's willing.
So moved.
Or
Recommended by Mr. Mena and supported by Mrs. Murphy, I believe.
Yep.
If I can get a roll call vote, Mr. Mena, please.
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
Trustee Hood,
Yeah.
Trustee Mena, yes. Trustee Murphy,
yes.
Trustee Roney,
Yes.
and Trustee Ruskin.
Yes. So motion carries 6-0. And following this, we have a work session of the board for operations for 2021. I believe that we'll be logging off and logging on to a new.
Actually, Dr. Ruskin, I just made you the host, and so you will be staying on this. You can just mute your cameras